We've reached the 10th video here on the channel. Now, most of my videos so far have been guitar videos. I've not done a list for a while. Let's change that. Hello everybody, CAOS Music here, hope you're all having a great day. Today I'm going to be taking you through my top 10 albums from 2010 to 2019. Over the course of a decade you will end up with a list of great albums, and there were some great albums over the decade just gone. So I thought I'd try and whittle my list down to my 10 favourites. This is for all albums released between January the 1st, 2010 and finishing at December the 31st, 2019. So if it's not released in that time, it's not included. I'll be doing one for other decades in the future. Quick note, this is all based on my opinions. If you have other choices, which I'm sure you will, then please put them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Anyway, if we're all good, let's get into my list. Starting at number 10. We have CAOS with their 2012 album Monolith. CAOS were a fairly new band when I was in college, and I remember one of my friends playing the sweeping section to Imperial from the album before, and it sounded great. The Edge of the Earth album from the year earlier was fun to listen to, but Monolith was much more my thing. The lead track, Out From Below, is one of my go-to guitar songs to warm up with. The album contains some of my favourite riffs, with the likes of Fear the World, The River and the title track, along with one of the nicest surprises in the hidden Ghost track at the end of Enshrined, with frontman Josh Middleton opting to use his clean singing voice with an acoustic rather than the usual growl vocals like it is with all the other songs. The only main issue I've had with CAOS in general on the earlier albums is the typical thrash drum beat. It's used far too often, pretty much in every fast section of every song. It isn't enough to put me off these incredible songs, but it was a talking point in saying there wasn't much creativity in the drumming. But that aside, the songs are well written. Being into my old 80s thrash metal, it fed my craving for a good modern take on that. It was good enough to reach my top 10, but there were albums this decade that I found much better, so it stays at number 10. Number 9 goes to Mastodon with The Hunter. After a near-perfect Crack the Sky album from 2009, which will be featuring on the Naughties list, The Hunter came along in 2011. The second non-concept album by the band, there is still a common theme among the songs using the Chinese element of wood as its theme. Bad songs are limited, you can easily listen through this album in its entirety. There are heavy songs like Black Tongue, Curl Up the Burl and Spectralite, softer songs with Sparrow and the title track, and everything in between, like my recent cover of Stargasm. I'll leave a ticker note at the top of the screen for you to check that out if you haven't already. Another fantastic album by Mastodon, my second favourite behind Crack the Sky, one to definitely check out. The Devin Townsend Project takes number 8 with their 2016 album Transcendence. The first thing to mention about this album is the production. Wow, what a wall of sound. There are layers aplenty. You almost hear something new every time you listen through these songs. From the ethereal storm bending and Failure, the solo to which is one of Devin's best, to the progressive masterpiece that is Higher, which I'll give some serious credit to Ryan Van Peerderen and his feat in this song. My god, there is some fast double bass in this. This album still flows perfectly with previous albums from the DTP, with the overall sound. It's a really good album. If you haven't heard it, you should. Even if lower mid-tier prog isn't really your thing, it'll be a great way to get yourself into it. If you want to hear where the Empath album came from a couple of years ago, you should check this out and you'll get a good idea of just how creative Devin can be. Number 7, Fantasist by Fantasist. The only album on this list by an independent band. While their first album, Giggle Juice, is just as good and could have been on this list, the 2013 self-titled second album by one of Manchester's best independent bands, in my opinion, is one of the best albums I heard across this decade. While I will admit the production and mix of the album is more how you'd think an independent band would sound compared to the bigger bands and bigger budgets around, this album's songwriting and the quality of ability of the three members of the band easily make this album stand against the big guns, in my opinion. The album contains my favourite Fantasist song, Watch It Crumble, and one of the best bass-led songs in Thump, although on a negative note, that snare sound. What happened there, guys? The album was remixed and remastered this year, and thankfully most of the issues were resolved, especially that snare sound on Thump. But even without the remaster, this is a brilliant album, and I urge you to check it out. Unfortunately, the band announced their end with the release of the remastered album and their 3-song EP, Embers, which I'll be doing a video review of in the next few weeks. Until then, go check them out and enjoy what the guys were so good at. Trivium makes it to number 6 with The Sin and the Sentence. What an amazing return to the Trivium I remember and loved back in the noughties. They had a run of pretty poor albums starting as far back as 2010s in waves. People may love it, but I didn't think much of the album as a whole. The title track may have been amazing, but the rest of the album wasn't great in my opinion. But the arrival of Alex Bent on the drums seems to have revitalised the band in a really good way. The 2017 album is a joy to listen to right the way through, from the amazing title track kicking things off, the epic Betrayer and Heart From Your Hate, through to the blistering drums on Closer thrown into the fire. Matt Heafy has brought back his scream vocals after omitting them completely from the previous album, and it's clear he's been working on them. Combined with the awesome riffs and just the overall feel of the songs, they all just flow so well. A true statement of intent. The album that followed seemed to resume this style possibly even better, but that's for another video. Riffs galore, fantastic leads, great vocals right the way through, bass that leads and has its own great style, and those drums. Those drums are what Trivium have been needing since the departure of Travis Smith back in 2009, and we're only at number 6. There's still 5 albums I think were better. Number 5. And I'm sure some of you have been waiting for this band to appear on this list, with my liking of them anyway. At number 5, we have Vola, and applause of a distant crowd. What can I say about Vola that I haven't already said in previous videos? They have a very unique sound, blending the heaviness of progressive metal with the incredible melodic sound of 80s synth pop. This 2018 album shows that off much more than the Inmazes album that came the year before. I heard them first supporting Haken, and what a gig that was. I first heard the clean vocals in their line check and was expecting clean sung melodic music. And then they kicked off with Smart Friend and nearly knocked me off my feet. I was not expecting it at all. Check out my cover of Smart Friend, I'll put it in the ticker above for you. I'll again give massive thanks, like I did on the cover, to drummer Adam for donating some of the stems of their songs from this album for me to do some proper covers, with just my guitar tracks. I'll be doing another with a vocal track in the coming weeks, be on the lookout for that. Anyway, back to the album. Some of the singles from Applause are some of my favourite songs of all time. Smart Friend, Ruby Pool, Alien Shivers. I will make a point though, in saying that they have a thing of releasing too many songs released from their albums. The recent album, Witness, is much more guilty of this, as there are less tracks on that album than on this one. I think they released 5 songs from Applause, Luckily, they're all amazing, much like the songs from Witness, so they have that going for themselves. There may be the odd song that you need to be in the correct mood for to listen to with the rest of the album, Vertigo and Closer Green Screen Mother being the two that stand out for that, but even they are great songs. The whole album is a triumph from a newer band, and the newest band on this list has made it into my top 5. Number 4, and another choice that was probably expected, although maybe not as low as this. We have Haken with Vector. Now, this was a difficult choice between this and the superb Mountain album that came a few years earlier, but I opted for 2018's Vector for the simple reason that it's more to my taste. Heavy, guitar-driven songs, great vocal soundscapes, and also some of my favourite songs from the band, particularly the opening section of Clear into the Good Doctor. Veil is one of the best progressive songs of the last few years, and instrumental Nil by Mouth is one of the heaviest unexpected songs from a band like this. As soon as the main guitars kick in, I can't help but give a little laugh at just how it starts. Like the last entry, this album was let down slightly by the sheer number of songs released from it. I think I heard 4 of them before the album was released, but I might be wrong. But with the album only being 7 songs long, or 6 full songs if you don't include Clear, that's a lot of songs released before the album, which doesn't leave much to be heard upon the album's release. There's only one song that I've struggled to get into, which is Host. It's a great song, but it just doesn't feel as good to me as the rest of the album was upon first listens. I can easily listen to it now, it just took some time to get used to. Haken are a fantastic band that belong in the well-known tier of progressive metal bands alongside Dream Theater, and stand there happily in my opinion. They can easily hold their own. They're all amazing musicians, they are superb at songwriting, and they have a few big albums, The Mountain, this, and Virus from 2020, which can hold their own against progressive metal's finest. Into the top 3, and making it just above Haken, is Alter Bridge and their 2013 album, Fortress. Again, it was either this or 2010's AB3, but this got the spot as I find the songs are better overall. There is less filler, like I find a few of the later songs on AB3 to be. Kicking off with one of my favourite album openers of all time in Cry of Achilles, right through to the epic closer of title track Fortress, this album is full of brilliant songs. With much more heavier songs to offer than softer songs, this is for those that prefer to hear their guitars driven. The main drawback with this album is the lack of split harmonies on the vocals. Whereas AB3 had both Miles Kennedy and Mark Tremonti sharing vocal harmonies, they're all done by Miles this time round, although Mark instead gets a full song to do lead vocals on with the song Waters Rising. One song in particular does unfortunately show off the squeakiness of Miles' voice that a lot of my friends at least can't stand. That goes to All Ends Well. Some points, even I have to admit, his voice goes a little too far into that territory. But those are the only drawbacks. Musically, this album is one of the best of Alter Bridge's catalogue, and it takes its spot here at number 3. Number 2, and we're back with Alter Bridge's Mark Tremonti and his solo album from 2015, Cauterize. This album came out at the right time for me, as I was recovering in hospital from a liver transplant at the time. I'd already heard a couple of snippets from the album and was excited, but then this came out and helped me through the alone time of recovery in that side room. I think just the timing of the album's release and the sheer joy it gave me during that time puts it above Fortress for me. But with songs like Radical Change, Tie the Noose with one of Mark's best vocal choruses, and the superb closing song Providence, this album can stand easily against the albums released by Mark's main band. The title track, Cauterize, has been my phone's ringtone for many years now, so it has that going for itself. The only song I may have a problem with is Sympathy. While it easily holds its own against the other songs on the album, it's the only song that sounds generally happy compared to the darker songs that make up the rest of the album. For just that one song to sound more feel-good sounds odd to me, although the change in feel briefly might be just what the album needed. A truly great album that has a strong place in my heart. It was there when I needed music the most. I thank it and Mark Tremonti for that. But it still wasn't number one in my opinion. We've made it to my favourite album from the last decade. After all the heavy, fast albums featured on this list, this album may not be what you were expecting. My number one album, from right at the start of the decade, goes to 2010's Diamond Eyes by Deftones. Let me start by saying I had never been a fan of Deftones until this album came out. I didn't even think much of White Pony. But this album, under the circumstances of which it was created, is beautiful. For those that don't know, in 2008, after their last album, their then bassist, Chi Cheng, was seriously injured in a crash. He was put in a semi-comatose state, where he remained until his untimely death in 2013. Deftones were working on a new album, Eros, at the time. This album was entirely shelved and a new album was created, with Sergio Vega taking on the bass duties. Diamond Eyes was one hell of an album to come out with, given what was going on around them. Any song could be seen as a highlight. Singles like the title track, Sex Tape, You've Seen the Butcher, and fan favourite Rocket Skates show the diversity of the album. My personal favourite, Beauty School, is exactly that. An exhibition of sheer beauty. Even if the lyrics are, well, look them up and see if you can figure out the theme of the song. I have a cover of the title track coming up as next week's video, so stay tuned for that. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to keep updated with all goings on. This album is worth the listen to from start to finish. Even the songs seen to some as filler, in my opinion, is some of the best filler to feature on any album. So, there you have it. My number one album of the last decade is Diamond Eyes by Deftones. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me through this list. If you enjoyed it, please give the video a like, a share, and please do subscribe to the channel. I really would appreciate it. What was your favourite album from this time frame? Put down what you think was best in the comments below. I'd love to know your favourites. That's it for this video. I've been CAOS Music. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.